morning, everybody. How you doing today? Turn to somebody and say, you look good on the last Sunday in this ghetto building. We are so glad that you're here today. Welcome if you happen to be brand new with us. If it's your first time at Journey, it'll be your last time in this building. Or we come together to worship. If you happen to be new, my name's Scotty. I'm one of the pastors here at Journey. We're so glad you chose to worship with us today on this day. It's a little bit different. Obviously, if you call this place home, you come around a little bit. We're doing a little bit different order of service. And it wasn't a powerful couple of songs to begin us this morning, praising God, thanking Him for all He's done in this place. I love that Jonathan and Fred are representing among the 37 ladies who came to lead us in worship this morning. And so let me just begin with reading a little scripture for us this morning. We're finishing up a series called Uncharted Waters, because as a church we are stepping into a new territory. We are going out into uncharted waters. We're headed into a new place for our family as a church. And so the last couple of weeks we've been talking about what does that look like for the people of God to take a big next step together as a church. We talked about that it's going to take some bravery and some courage, because every time there's uncertainty and there's an unknown, God speaks in the first chapters of Joshua 4 different times to the leader. He says, you must be courageous. Don't forget to be incredibly strong, because you're going to need that. And last week we talked about what it would look like and how we need to leave some stuff on this side of the river. So for the last several weeks we've been looking at the people of God crossing over the Jordan River. I mean, it has a lot to do with us as a church moving from one place to the next. If you happen to be new, and I don't want to assume if it is your first day with us, we're telling a little bit of the story about how we landed into this place today and then where we're headed in the future. But we bought a piece of property and are relocating and moving 8.5 miles from this location onto I-25 just south of Cabela's, right on the west side of the interstate. You can see it when you drive by. About 75,000 cars drive by every day, and we are taking that big next step together as a church. And so over those last few weeks, we've been looking at Joshua chapter 1 and 2, and then chapter 3. And now today we're going to look at chapter 4 to wrap up our series as the people of God who've been rescued. They've been set free as slaves from Egypt, and then Moses, their deliverer, takes them to the promised land, and then the spies say, no, it's too challenging. We can't take this. And so God takes them on a 40-year walk, and He gets Egypt out of them, and He gets that negativity out of them, that lack of faith out of them, and a new generation comes forward and now stands at the same place at the Jordan River at flood stage. Last week we talked about that the people of God, he gives them very specific instructions. He says, if you step into the river, then the river will part and you can walk across on dry land. And I said last week, like all of us, we wish that God would make it dry land and then walk across, but He never does that. He always waits for us to step in, and then God steps up. And so that's where we find ourselves in chapter 4. I just want to read through the chapter here together today. The verses will be on the screen, and you can follow along with me today. And we're just going to tell some of the stories of celebration of what God has done in our midst in this place as we begin to move forward. Joshua chapter 4, beginning of verse number 1. It says, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, now choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight. He gives instructions to these leaders, and he says there's 12 tribes of Israel, and he says choose from among you someone to go back out into the dry ground, go back out into the river, and I want you to grab these 12 stones and bring them out. So Joshua called together the 12 men, and he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe. And he said, now go over before the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan, and each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you in the future when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And when it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded, and they took 12 stones out of the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of tribes of Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua said, set up these 12 stones that they had been from the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priest who had carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. When the priest who carried the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua was done by the people, just as Moses had directed Joshua, and the people hurried over. I guess you would. As soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side while the people watched. The men of Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh crossed over, ready for battle in front of the Israelites, as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 were armed for battle as they crossed over before the Lord in the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him all the days of his life, just as they had stood in awe of Moses. And then the Lord said to Joshua, command the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant law to come up out of the Jordan. And so Joshua commanded the priests, come up out of the Jordan. And the priests came up out of the river carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. And no sooner had they set their feet on dry ground than the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as they had before. On the 10th day of the first month, the people came up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, in the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. Now, this is an incredibly powerful chapter here in Joshua, and he says to them, as we cross over, I want you to go back. Now, everybody's on the other side, and he says 12 leaders. I want you to go back into the middle of the Jordan, and I want you to take 12 uncut stones. I think that's very important. He takes these uncut stones. They're not polished by man. They've just been there in the river as evidence of what God has done. I like this little detail where he says, and put it up onto your shoulder. It means, hey, don't go get a pebble. Get something big and put it up onto your shoulder and carry it out. And why does he do that? He says, because we're going to take these stones and we're going to build a memorial, so that when your children say, what are these for? You'll be able to tell the story of the faithfulness of God. These came from the middle of the river where there was no way. God made a way, and we passed through. And generations will come and go and tell the stories. The stones are the stories of God's faithfulness. And so a little bit today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to tell some stories of God's faithfulness in this place. So I'm going to ask two couples to go ahead and come on up. This is the Kings and the Schultzes. Oh, and Julia's coming as well. Come on up onto the stage. Let's give them a hand. You don't even know why, but go ahead and give them a hand. Thank you. As they come, let me just tell you a little bit about these guys. I believe these two couples and one of their sweet daughters here, Julia. This is the Kings and the Schultzes. And they, if you don't know these, you guys go ahead and come on over, have a seat. I believe Travis has got a microphone for you. These two families here, along with others, but these two families here were a part of the original core team. Matt, ride that thing like a horse, buddy. Get ready. They were a part of the original core team that helped to launch our church. And I can say this without any reservation, like every single meeting of any importance that we've ever had as a church, every decision that has ever been made for the direction of this church, one or many of these people have been sitting in this room. Kathy right now is the chairman of our board. All of you guys have served on our board at different times. Not Julia yet. Listen, we're going to card you for your age to get on there. But anyway, I just wanted to bring them up today because they have been here the entire time as a church, and just to tell a little bit of the story around this facility and what it's meant for them and their families. So Matt, would you tell us a little bit? Are you on there? Let me help you out. Let me make sure we're good to go.
Don't let me screw it up.
Technical difficulty. There we go, man.
Better?
Yes, sir. This is Matt King. Matt, tell us a little bit about how we found this facility and where we were before.
Yeah, well, when Scotty asked if I wanted to say something about what life has been like for me doing church in whatever phrase we use, this ghetto, old ugly grocery store place, first thought that came to my mind was everybody need to have a little bit of a picture of how and why we ended up here. It was about 12 years ago. We were all meeting at the Marriott. The church was called Southlink at the time. And we were meeting in the ballroom, and actually we had a lot of the other meeting rooms that we used for the kids. Great services, great worship, that type of stuff, but we pretty quickly realized that we wouldn't be a very strong church if all we were doing was those Sunday services, and we needed a place that we could call home throughout the week and do things throughout the week. We quickly formed a committee, which basically consisted of me and Kathy for most of the time. We started meeting with some realtors, talking to commercial brokers, that type of stuff. And as they asked us the standard line of questioning, how much money do you have for a down payment?
Zero.
How much money do you have to make improvements? What's
Zero.
your track record of paying rent? We pretty quickly realized that this was going to be an unconventional type approach. Kathy and I just started driving around on our daily business looking for signs that didn't say CBRE or anything like that. Anything that was a piece of paper stuck in a window or an abandoned building, we considered that was possibly going to be the place for us. And throughout that process, one of our leadership team actually ended up coming forward and saying, "Hey, I've got a neighbor that has a cousin with a nephew and an uncle that they know this lady named Tilly, and she owns a gymnastics place, and she's renting out a little church space, subletting a little church space." And it was like, well, let's see what that's about. Gave her a call. Turned out it was 7,000 square feet and fit about 100 chairs. And actually the 7,000 square feet, we've used that, but since Scotty's taken on the policy that we don't round up, it was actually more like 6,800 square feet. So we...
That's tight.
That was tight. That was about a third the size of what we were using at the Marriott. And so we kind of just took that. That was another one of those things we took off the list and just kind of moved on. And then over several more weeks, I kind of stayed in touch with Tilly. And at one point she said, "Why don't you just come tour the place?" And as I was walking around, we ended up over in the gym. And she started showing me places in the gym that they didn't use on Sunday mornings. Next thing we knew, it was, well, hey, you could do youth here, and there was a Taekwondo place that they don't work on Sunday mornings. Well, that's overflow. Ended up at that point, it was like, something about this, we need to pursue it. I ended up calling up Kathy, and I was like, I don't know if we want to try and pitch this again to the leadership team. Called up Kathy and said, "What do you think?"
Yeah, I guess, and at that point, I was at wit's end, and when he called me, I was literally in a parking lot in Inverness and just had pretty much given up. I'm like, we have looked at absolutely everything. There's nothing out there for us. And Matt called me, and he's like, I think this might actually work. So it was just an amazing moment, and came and looked at the space. It was actually built out for a church. The zoning was completely wrong, and we knew we were going to have a problem with that, but I remember talking to Matt about it, and like, how much does she want for rent? Okay, I think we can do that, just sign the lease, and should we have an attorney look at it? We're like,
Let's don't even read
No.
it. Don't even read it.
Well, we just need to sign that and get moving forward. So yeah, we ended up here. Huge zoning violation, but
Hey,
you know,
forgiveness, not permission.
it
Like,
was-
is that the?
well, exactly. And it's just one of those amazing stories. It just so happened that I had been playing bunco with the mayor of Centennial a lot, and actually had been also through this whole special review process with the house in my neighborhood. So I knew the entire staff who was going to do the process. So it actually became this very comfortable process to do the zoning. And anyway, it was a
Yeah.
grand adventure.
And that was a big step for you guys. I mean, it's a small band of people who are really committed to this process. And like you said, we kind of flipped through the lease and like signed our names on it because you were without a pastor. It was a small group of people who were saying, we love our family, we love this church, we need a place to meet, and God will guide us to the next places. But one of the things I really wanted you guys to talk about today in that same vein is that your families have grown up here. Like Julie, you were 6 years old about that time, 4 years, okay, 4 years old about that time. And then your guys were like kindergarten, preschool-ish.
Yeah, kindergarten
So,
and preschool.
yeah, so talk a little bit about that and what that's meant to your families here in this place.
Okay, so the
Thanks, man.
our boys were.
You got a rocking beard, by the way, man. I'm just so jealous.
Thank you. That's that's
the cool new deal.
It is only by God's grace. That's otherwise.
what I was
that's
thinking.
all right. So the boys were in kindergarten when we started, and when we first started. When we first came to Journey to Southlink, really we were just really fed up with the kind of church and the kind of experience for the kids, and so when we first came, it was like our eyes were opened for the kind of instruction and the kind of experience that the kids could get. And I love what Scotty says most weeks is that we don't babysit in the back. And I volunteer in the kids ministry, and we don't babysit in the back. It's a instructional, and we're put the Word of God in the kids' minds and heart, and we did that, and they did that back then as well. And we have this great story. We'd visit Kathy's grandparents down in Cripple Creek, and we would go to church with them. And they had a tiny little church with about 12 or 15 people in it, and the boys were in like second or third grade. And so we'd start the service, and then all the kids would go back to their Sunday school. And after service, the volunteer came out, and she looked at us. She was like,
Your kids know more than I do about
and
this
she
or
said,
something?
she said, "Where do you guys go to church?" She said, "That was amazing. They are very just like, they basically it's like, oh, we know this story, and this is what and then this happened, and she was blown away by just what they knew and how open they were about talking about it. And
Yeah.
it was really incredible, and the amount of support that they got with the kids ministry. The boys had a very strong relationship with their water polo coach, and their water polo coach died in a tragic car accident when they were in I think it was like fifth grade. And the staff and the kids pastor at the time just really took care of them and just made sure that they were okay, and had someone to talk to, and took them out, and just that close bond of being able to rely on was really, really special for them. The amount of closeness and how much investment that the church has made in them is they've been able to grow up and not only just grow up in it and then start leading as well. They've been leading at Camp Como, and then has gone as far as leading in the kids ministry themselves as high school leaders as well. So, from starting at a very young age, they've gone and become really strong,
Great young men.
great young men.
Yeah. How about you guys?
Well, I'll just segue back from, Scotty came in after we moved in here, and it was only a couple months, even with those overflow spaces, that we were filled up.
Mhm.
We were like, oh man. And I remember to myself, kind of having a crisis of faith, thinking that, did we do the wrong thing? Did we jump at something that we shouldn't have? And just over the years of getting over all the hurdles and things, my faith personally just continued to grow. But the biggest thing, realizing that, God's always at work. What he did with putting us in this old rundown grocery store, we had to focus on the people.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about a building. It wasn't about a structure. It was only about the people. We had no choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that with that type of focus of a church, myself personally, my family, where we are, both in faith and just everything else, we would not be there if it wasn't for this church, this type of church, in this old, ugly grocery store. Truly believe that's what made it. I believe if we take that same culture, that same philosophy to this new location, new facility, but we stay away from focusing on a facility, it's unlimited what we're going to be able to accomplish as a church. That's just my heart, and
Fantastic.
it's what I believe.
Thank you. Did you want to say something, Joanne? Yeah. That's a good thing to clap for.
I have a quick other related story to
Okay.
tell. About the same time, 2006, same time that Kathy and the Matts were describing, we obviously we were transitioning. We had lost the pastor that had founded the church. We were transitioning to a new building, and so I was part of a 4 to 5 person team that was responsible for interviewing and selecting our next pastor. And so we had several candidates, about 3 or 4 pastors who were coming in to interview with us. And I think Scotty was the last of the 3 or 4.
Save the best,
And, all of the other candidates had more experience than Scotty. Scotty was the only one who had never served as a lead pastor in a church. He was coming from a background as a youth pastor. And the other pastors had more experience. They were a little more polished. Life had experience had, smoothed down the rough edges. He was 31, okay? And he was still had a little bit of a rough edges, a little brash, a little cocky at times.
I'm so glad I'm over that. Like grown in Jesus.
So we got through all of the interviews, and the interview panel comes together, and we're very aware of the fragile place that the church was in. Changing facility, changing pastor. We literally didn't know if we had enough money in the bank to meet payroll, the next payroll.
But we didn't tell Scotty.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for telling me that.
But we knew this was going to be a really important decision, and so we really sought God, and we prayed, and we talked, and agonized over it. And where we landed was that we felt like we had heard from God, and that He was telling us that His church was not built through people being unwilling to step out and to take risks. That His church throughout history has been built by people who were pioneers, who were ready to step out and to blaze new trails and to open new doors. And so we said, okay, well, we think that this brash young pastor is the one who's going to take us there. We really felt like God was telling us to step out. There's greatness in this pastor, and He's going to be able to open those doors in ways that some of the more seasoned and conservative pastors were not going to be able to. So we made that decision. I think it worked out pretty doggone well. And I feel personally that this church is in that place again, that we are in that place of God telling us, don't get comfortable, don't get settled in. It's time to step out. It's time to open new doors and to take the church now to that next level. And so it's 10 years later, but we're at another threshold. And I'm so excited that we are stepping as a church into this. And I think we'll have that same sort of success and reach so many more people.
Awesome. Great. Julie, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of sum it up on a more personal note. So clearly, I grew up here. I've been to every youth camp. I've been on 2 mission trips. I'm now a part of the student band, and most importantly, I found Christ and was baptized here. And through all of that, I've found myself on a journey home. But I realized that it's the people that make it the home, not the building. And lucky for us, we're taking the people with us. And
Most of them. I mean, we're still.
but I mean, we're all going to the new location.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, it's the people that make it the home. So no matter where we go, it will still be a home.
Great. Thank you. Let's give these guys a huge hand. Thank you, guys. Take those with you. I'm going to ask our worship team to come back up. We're going to sing another song here in a moment, and then we're going to tell a few more stories. But obviously, I wanted you to see some of these people who have been serving diligently behind the scenes for so many years, just our church in such a great way of faithfulness. We are going to receive our offering now. So if you came prepared to give, you can get ready to do that. Our men and women are ushers who are going to receive our offering. If you would go ahead and take your places. I know that many of you who attend here, you give online, but if you came prepared to give today, as they pass the bucket down, you can place that in there as well. It's also a good chance to remind you right now, before we just sing a song of praise to God, we're going to be off for the next 2 weeks as a church formally. We'll be giving you a lot of information through email about that. And our next public service is planned for July the 16th at our new facility. We'll be having some work days. We'll be sending you information about that on Sundays and how you can help and be involved. But this is... just so you know, like the stories are the sermon today. I always like to let people know, like, what the time frame is, because I'm a guy, and when I go to like a recital for my kids, I want to know, is this thing going to get over on time? And it is. Second service, no promises, but first service, we got to get you out, so you made a good choice. Our church, from the very beginning, it has always been, it's about people, and it's about stories. Even the guys, standing up here on this stage, Jonathan, who just walked down, I met him the very first Sunday I came to teach in this place. And he and his sweet little wife they weren't married then. They said, can we get married? And I said, you guys look about 13. So that's legal in Georgia. I don't think it is in Colorado. So we'll wait, but they were already graduated from high school and college, and they were ready to go. And Mike Gary playing the bass right here, and almost every Sunday, nobody knows how much he puts in behind the scenes, like leading and helping and putting together and leading our band. And and Mike has dealt with chronic illnesses for a long, long time, a lot of pain, a lot of sleepless nights, but there's never a Sunday morning he's not here, like giving it everything he's got to serve our church. And Colleen leading us in worship. The first time I met her, we were sitting right back there, and she was like, we're just trying to put our life back together, our little family, and here she is leading us in worship. And over the last few weeks, we've been saying, hey, would you share with us some of your stories? Would you share with us some of your stones that you've carried out of the Jordan in this place? And some people turned them in, and they were anonymous. They just said, hey, here's a little bit of my story. And some of them had names and pictures, and we'll throw them up. But I just want to go through a few of those here today. And the first one was anonymous, and it just said, we were invited. And I remember vividly the first Sunday we came. It wasn't anything that I was used to. And on the car ride home, I told my husband, there is no way all those people are actually that happy. It was that simple little prayer that hooked me, the one we pray every week, God, speak to me. I wanted to desperately believe that we weren't there by accident. Over time, I came to find that we weren't all as happy as we first appeared, but rather we were all just happy to be here together, a house full of broken people looking for the relationship to have, not a religion to follow. And so started the journey. And at the time, I had no idea that the name of a church would be so prophetic for us. Lord, I love that. This is the Fords. We had a little technical difficulty with some of the pictures, but Sean and Daniel Ford and their sweet daughter Lucy wrote this. Journey not only saved our little family, but gave us an extended family we never dreamed we'd find. Sean and I were on the brink of divorce with not much hope, and we decided to give Journey a try. We had talked about finding a church home for a while and never thought we'd find the right fit. In the midst of that particular hard time in marriage, we were led to Journey at exactly the right time. The teaching on Sunday helped us set the course for God's healing in our marriage. And if that wasn't blessing enough, we got plugged into a small group that has meant the world to us. Coincidentally, or God's perfect timing as we call it, the small group was beginning a study on marriage. It helped us heal and learn from other couples in the same stage of life. They go on to just talk about ups and downs that they've been through and the relationships that they built here in this place and the places that they serve. This is Chloe. She shared a little bit of a story, and she said, I was raised in a very rigid, legalistic church and family, and I was taught to fear God without any question and obey his rules. Anybody else in the house? All of us. It made me into someone who had struggled with the concepts of grace and forgiveness, not only accepting them for myself, but bestowing them upon others. And this put a strain on our early marriage. We started attending Journey. I remember feeling so amazed by the attitude of compassion, the idea that I didn't have to be perfect, but that I would simply be met where I was. And that was so freeing. For the first time, I realized it was okay to be messy. Anybody else find that out in this place? It was the first time when I started accepting us and our family exactly the way we were. What a change it has made for me as an individual and for our marriages. So many times I've teared up in services because of the humbling realization that God loves me exactly how I am, and not because of anything I could ever bring. This is Chris Boyer. He says this: Journey is where I began following the Lord. Having just divorced my wife of 20 years, dealing with ongoing PTSD issues from combat duty in the first Gulf War, and nearly taking my own life, I needed a brand of strength and power that the Marine Corps didn't teach. I needed spirituality. Journey Church has become a solid rock, a grounding foundation for peace and strength and my relationship with the Lord. This is the Brooks Forts. Next slide, I think. Do we have a picture? Yeah, there they are. Hey, Niles looks happy to be there, man. Any other parents feel that pain? Everybody smile right now. Smile like you're happy. He's such a happy little dude, too. I feel I can never put into words what God has done in our lives so far in this place. We started our family, found lifelong friends. We lost jobs. We found new ones. We've learned what it is to give unconditionally. No matter what our daily life looks like, we know that when we walk into this place, we are welcomed with open arms and our families are poured into. Journey's not about people. It's about people, not numbers. We love our Journey family. This is the Summers. They began attending our church about 10 years ago, and the minute we walked into Journey Church, we felt God's love, people accepting us with open hearts. We loved how authentic and approachable everyone was. After moving to Parker for a few years, we decided to start attending a church closer to home. And we attended that church for a while. It just never felt right, and God was tugging our hearts to come back. And once again, we were welcomed back with open hearts and open arms, not only by our pastors, but also by the loving people of Journey. God has blessed this church in so many ways and with love and acceptance, and we'll continue to serve God and his people with the kind of authentic love that we have received in this place. This is Jenny. Not those two people, the next. This is Jenny Berger. I like that flower. Jenny says, a friend started bringing me to church, and I was a skeptic at first. I went for a couple of months, but not sure that Journey was for me yet. One Sunday, our pastor gave a sermon about taking care of people in our church, and people were asked to fill out cards if they had a need or if they had something to give. At the time, I was struggling with self-harm and destructive thoughts, and that Sunday, I asked for help, and I wrote down my need to get help. Journey paid for me to see a counselor for a whole year until I was healed and in a better place. I was amazed that a church would step up and support me in this way. I've been blown away and I never looked back. Journey has now been my church for 5 years, and I've made so many great friends here who walk with me every day, and I haven't had one thought about self-harm since. Journey took care of me when I needed it. The Journey family has also loved me while I'm still trying to figure out who I am and continue to love me through the process. I truly never thought I could be so happy and loved by a church family, and Journey continues to surprise me and bless me every day. This is the Cantors, and I think they're in the same building. Do we have a picture of them? Maybe? Good? No? Yeah. Look at all their kids smiling, Brooks. You see that? Leah? They're actually sitting beside each other because they're best friends, so they know that their kids were 3 seconds away from melting down too. Man, they have shared so many things here, but just the first sentence, just calling Journey our home is an understatement. My husband found Jesus at this church, and we've discovered so much of our God-given purpose in this place. So I remember going to the hospital when Kim was having twins. They're the smiling ones. And she was really, really close to death. Like she almost didn't make it through that. And then Chris saying, the only person I had my phone I knew I could call right now was somebody in my small group, and calling Jeff, and saying that Jeff with the kid that wasn't smiling, and just saying, hey, we're with each other, and we're together, and they just write so much about serving our church. This is my our family friend, Brandy. She said, I was invited to Journey by a friend in 2011. And when I came, I was battling health issues, unhappy marriage, strange relationship with my daughter, and I was suffering from guilt and shame, and I was completely broken. The church welcomed me exactly where I was at the time. And I couldn't understand at that time that my personal journey with Jesus and how he loves me. But I did remember every Sunday that the key message was, we accept you exactly where you are in your life, and we just want to help you take your next step in a personal relationship with Christ. Therefore, I just kept coming back. And with the support of Scotty and Amy and our entire church, I can now say I'm healthy, out of toxic relationships, have a wonderful relationship with my daughter, and I've been set free from guilt and shame because of the gift that Jesus has given me of dying on the cross. And I continue to keep taking my steps. I also learned that no matter how young you may be, you can have a huge influence over someone's life and leading them to Christ. Micah and Maddie Priest have been so encouraging to my daughter and my faith. They've encouraged us, challenged us, led by example, and because of them, my daughter Meredith and I were baptized 3 years ago. It's such a great testimony of the strength of youth at Journey. Thank you, Journey Church, for saving my soul, for allowing the Lord to use you and giving me a place to call home. I love you so dearly. Just story after story. People saying, hey, I've gotten involved, I've stepped in, I've led, and some of the worst days of life. Some McCurdy family says, I haven't been a member or attender of Journey for that long. What brought me to this church and this location was my son, Zachariah McCurdy. My son was good friends with Nick Barron. Through their friendship, my son started attending church. Through their friendship, my son met a group of wonderful individuals, including Charlie and Wendy Mingle. Because of Charlie and Wendy and Nick, Zach found God back in his life. This was something that I value and was forever thankful for. Zach, my son, made peace with God. And then my beloved son committed suicide in 2015. His death is what brought me and my daughter Faith to this church. I want to thank Nick for helping both my children to find God in their lives. Most of all, I want to thank Charlie and Wendy Mingle for loving my children and guiding them. Thank you for guiding and supporting my daughter. You both have the gift to lead, and I'm so grateful for this. Forever in debt to your kindness and support through all of this. The last one that I'll read is an anonymous one, and it just says, when my husband and I were separated for 6 weeks in 2013, we were doing a marriage series at church at the time. My husband and I most needed it to be encouraged through some very painful things in our life. Throughout the years and since that time, there have been many reminders of God's forgiveness and grace and messages. There are many messages that seemed to happen at just the right time. Our marriage was restored and redeemed. Today, I'm leaving ashes and shame and scars on this side of the river, and we instead take beauty and redemption and restoration forward. This picture attached is of the ashes I collected out of the fire pit from the fire when we had shared as a family on the night that my husband and I ended up separating back in 2013. I held on to these ashes for 3.5 years, and now I see them often, and they remind me of the damage that happened. But I love that song by Beautiful Things by Gungor. It reminds me that God can take and make beauty from ashes. So it's just story after story after story of people's lives that God has met in this place. I've asked one more person to come up. I ask Micah Priest, my son, to come on up, and he's going to share a couple of thoughts with you guys as we close the service today. So this little guy has spent more time. This little guy has spent more time in this building probably than any other person besides myself and Heather Cattell, my assistant, CEO of Janitorial Services, Micah Priest.
All right. So good to see you guys all this morning. Celebration Sunday. It's awesome. As my dad said, I'm 17 years old. I'm going to be a senior, and I've been here since the beginning. I made my way through the ranks of all the kids ministry. When I first got here, I was in first grade. Made my way all the way through, and about to graduate our student ministry here, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was the best experiences of my life. And I'm going to read a little bit off some stuff that I wrote down. But when I look past in the 10 years, look at the past 10 years, I noticed that people come and go here, but this building has never left. The services have never stopped. God has always been behind us the whole time. My family and I have been surrounded by so many awesome, solid families, couples, and individuals because of this building. So much has happened in this building, from kids all the way up, especially in student ministry. Some crazy things have happened. We've had paint fights, bubble baths, food fights, incredibly loud and awesome worship, all-nighters, kids VBS, all kinds of parties and get-togethers here, where I had the best moments of my life with my best friends. So many lives have been transformed in this building. My life has been transformed in this building. My biological family is here, but I made an even bigger family around me in this place. My 4 best friends I met here, and we all go to 5 separate high schools. I don't think that's a coincidence, yet we're closer than brothers. We see each other more than I see people at my own school because we're that close and we love each other and we know everything about each other over the past couple years. And you can't break that bond. I met my older brother here. I cannot be more privileged when it comes to the relationships God has given me. When we're celebrating today, we're moving on, but we're also remembering this building and how much it's done for me. This is all I've ever known. I remember when I was a little kid, and I had to stay after service, like, Dad, come on, let's go, come on. Oh, one more person to talk. We have one more Growth Stripe meeting? Are you serious? This is ridiculous. I'm starving. Can we go to Big Bill's already? Oh, I'm going to miss Big Bill's. Oh, that's going to be good. Oh, Los Dos. Man, we're not going to have that anymore. Dang it. Okay. But just growing up here and just being here all the time, like 5 days a week, I'm here more than I should. Oh my gosh, I'm here all the time. So it's going to be bitter. It's hard. Probably going to give this building a hug when we leave. It's just like, man, like so much has happened in this place. Everything I know has happened in this place. The good and the bad. I've had tears of joy in this place, looking at fall retreats in the crowd, looking at our band and all hundreds of students going crazy and having the best time of their life, praising Jesus. It just brings tears in my eyes. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is what it's all about. This is what life's all about, is people going crazy and having the best time together in relationship for Jesus, and having that on a weekly basis on an ordinary Wednesday night in U groups in our youth room, just people like letting it all out in the middle of their week and just having the best time. It just it overwhelms me. It's crazy. And I've also had tears of distraught and tears of heartache in these chairs, just where I can just feel home, and this is where I can let it out. This is where I can be angry, I can be frustrated, and I can do this by myself. I can do this with God in these hallways. I've taken naps on these couches here, just like all of this. Like, this is my alone place where I feel home. And I also had the people in this building that I get to meet with here, and we get to talk on the couches and talk it out, and what I'm going through, we can talk it out and get better and get stronger. This place means everything. It's going to be so hard to say goodbye. But then there's also the sweetness factor that we're about to enter into. It's the bittersweet, and we're entering that sweetness factor, and it's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. I can't wait. Now we're moving from this special place, a place where so much has happened, and I'm so grateful that God has given us this place to spread his glory for 10 years. And God just continues to provide for us. In the book of Joshua that my dad has us going through, I've been reading it and studying it. And it says that when God called his people to move on to something far greater than they could ever imagine, God shows such beautiful symbolism at the Jordan River. He again tests his people by making them take a step of faith into the river. And while the priests stand with the ark in the middle of the river, in the middle of a miracle, they wait standing on dry ground. I love it. They didn't just stroll in. They didn't just lollygag into a river. I'm like, oh, awesome, we made it, cool. No, they were chasing after God. They were doing everything that they wanted him to do. They were being faithful. And finally, they made it. And they were standing firm. Like, put that on a t-shirt, standing on dry ground. Fires me up. It's amazing. It's just standing in dry ground. The priest holding the literal presence of God in the middle, and they wait for every single person, each and every person to cross the river. And that's what we're doing. We're moving on. We're stepping into the river. It's the people who have been here from the beginning have taken those leaps of faith for us. And we're in the middle of the river. In a couple weeks when we're in that building, we're in the middle of a miracle. We're so grateful that we have what we have, and we're here, and we've made it after chasing after God for this long. We're here standing on dry ground. And every single person who walks through those awesome all glass, all class garage doors, it's going to be great. When they walk in through those, we're going to wait for them, and we're going to be with them through every single experience until they completely cross the river. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for every person to cross that river. I'm so incredibly grateful for what's ahead. After all that we've been through, to think that there is so much more to come is mind-blowing. I can't wait for us to do this together for God. The best is yet to come.
All right, we could just go home now. So that was. So the band's going to come. We're going to sing our last song, and we're going to receive communion together. Don't you think there's not a more fitting way to end the service than by receiving communion, to say how grateful we are to God? If our ushers will just go ahead and come on as the band is coming, and we're going to pass it out to you today because it's very crowded and trying to get people to move, and so they're going to pass the elements today. They're going to pass the bread up and down the aisle, and you'll just hold on to that if you would for me. Just hold on to that, and then they're going to pass the cups down the aisle, and you'll hold on to that for me. And then we'll all receive it together as a moment of saying thank you. So you guys can go ahead and begin to pass that out. Our band's going to start to play, and as they pass this out, and here's what I'd love for us to do as they're passing it out, is once you've received the bread and waiting on the cup, just to say, if you've lived any amount of time in this house, and God has done good things in your life, would you just take a moment to say, thank you, Lord? Just quietly, God, thank you that you met me in this place. Some of you found Jesus in this place. Some of you were baptized in this place. Some of you met your spouse in this place. Some of you came back together with your spouse in this place. Some of you have made gigantic steps toward beating addiction in your life in this place. Just take a moment and begin to thank God. Thank you, Lord, for this. Thank you for meeting me here. Thank you for teaching me in this place. So on the night before Jesus is crucified, the night he's betrayed, he's gathered with his closest friends and family, and they're having a meal, they're having dinner. And he's beginning to describe to them this new covenant, this new promise that God is reaching out to men and women and drawing them to himself. And he says, in order for this to happen, a great price must be paid. And he says, every time you gather together, I want you to remember this. And remember that the communion celebration, Passover, it wasn't like this really tight religious like festival or ritual. It was friends around a table, right? And he breaks bread and he says, hey, this bread, this is what this represents. This is my body broken for you. He says, so take this, eat this, and do this in remembrance of me. So take and eat. He says, likewise, blood will be spilt, my blood, a blood of a new covenant. He says, every time you take this, remember the sacrifice that has been made for you, the price that has been paid. So take of the cup and do this in remembrance of me. Yeah. Just put those on the ground there. Why don't we all stand to our feet as we close today? So incredibly grateful for all that God has done among us in this place. Anybody grateful for everything that God has done in this place? And I just wanted to say, they're going to sing through this song and then we'll dismiss, like they'll sing about half of that and we'll get out. But I just wanted to say for you this morning, God meets people right where they are and just helps them take their next steps. Like that is the mantra of Journey. And God has met us as a people right where we are and just helped us take our next step. And maybe you need to hear that today, that he who called you is faithful and he will do it. I want you to look at this picture of something I drew in my notebook. You may see the date up in the corner, 2011. That was maybe a couple years after I climbed a hill where Cabela's is and said, God, this seems like a great place for a church. And I couldn't let it go, and I couldn't let it go, and I couldn't let it go. And I just drew this in my journal one day years ago and said, God, would you give us land here? And I'm just telling you, come on, you might need to hear that today. That God answered that prayer and honored that promise about a mile south on the other side of the interstate. So God, could you be a little bit more specific, please? And a couple years ago, it was just a big empty field, and I just go stand in that empty field and say, God, hundreds of people. If we could build a great church in the world's ugliest shopping center, what could we do in this place? What could God do among us in this beautiful place? So I invite you to come on that journey with us. And remember, the building's just the tool. The church is the people. The church is the people. And it's a beautiful place to go and worship, but it's all about the family. So let's sing as we lead, just with joyous celebration about our unstoppable God who has a plan for your life and for our church and continues to move us forward. Praise the living God.